Okay, we're not going to really spend much time reviewing, but in case there are those of you who wish not to go back over every single video I've uploaded so far, we'll just do a really quick review. I'm not reviewing plot, I'm not reviewing summaries of stories. I just want to remind you what you have. What I'm doing verbally right now is also on your syllabus, which is in front of you as well. So we first read The Harvest and Secret Life of Walter Mitty. We talked, interestingly, on that first week, or second week, I guess it was, about perspective and point of view. We talked about the unreliable narrator. We didn't actually get into point of view until 2 weeks later, but I wanted you to have some sort of working knowledge of that before we got to it, because I think it's a little bit more of a difficult idea to grasp. So you already had a foundation for that. So The Harvest and the Secret Life of Walter Mitty are great options to talk about for your essay if you want to explore perspective, point of view, character, non kind of traditional or unusual plot structures, right? Amy Hempel's character in The Harvest moves back and forth through time. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Walter Mitty moves back and forth through imaginary scenes in his brain, right? It would also be fascinating to talk about setting with both of those. Speaking of plot and then setting, I guess we got to later, but so plot, we really looked at Sunny's Blues, Boys and Girls, the lesson for plot. So remember, go back to Freytag's plot structure, but also when you go back to that, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, not every single story follows that exact order. So just be aware of that. Be aware that there are many ways. That's the most traditional way. We can probably track that through almost any story, even unusual sort of plot structures. But a story doesn't have to be that to be a story. Setting, of course, works for any of this, but we did start to talk about setting the next week when we read Girl, A Pair of Tickets, and The Lady with the Dog. Remember, with setting is more than the geographical surroundings for the characters. Although that is important, setting can also be temporal, meaning a time period. Setting can be mental, like The Harvest and Walter Mitty are both sort of, the setting is kind of in the head of the characters. Setting can be emotional. So there's so much more to setting than maybe what you've thought about before. It's more than just where a character is and where the story takes place, although that's important to know. For instance, A Pair of Tickets, that particular story is how it is because of the setting. The setting is very important to that story, right? And it helps create the emotional setting of that story as well. Then we finally got into introduction. Then we finally get into character and point of view. We talked about recitative, lusus naturae, and how to talk to your mother. Interestingly enough, you've got two first-person stories there, and then you've got one second-person story. But if you go back through all the stories we've read, you'll find the third person is in, for instance, The Lady with the Dog, and so on. With regard to point of view, like I said, there is first person, that's I, we. There is second person, that's you, and then there's third person, he, she, it, they. And with third person, you have a omniscient narrator is an option, which is a person who's narrating the story, who's not really part of the story, who has access to everything. All the characters' internal thinkings, feelings, so on and so forth. You have limited third person, which kind of fixates on one character. So The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, that is limited really to Walter Mitty's perspective. But Walter Mitty is not speaking from the first person. The story is not told from the first person. It is told from the third person narration, but through a limited and sort of specified view. The limited narrator focuses their attention on and through Walter Mitty. And then we have theme and figurative language. I asked you to do, I didn't spend a ton of time on this, although it's one of my favorite things about writing and reading writing, and it's one of the most important things to understand, but it's kind of one of those things that's difficult for me to talk about without text in front of me or without you in front of me. So if you did not already, and you were assigned this last week, but if you did not do this, go back and read both the chapters on theme and figurative language. Figurative language is going to be really important to all of the stories in this week. The Thing in the Forest, meaning this week, meaning the last week. The Birthmark, A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings, and The Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket. All of those are really full of figurative language and symbolism, and figurative language really helps unpack the theme of a story. So I hope that was a decent review. It was really just a verbal walking through what you have in front of you. If you have the syllabus in front of you, please email me if you have any questions. I'm going to make an announcement about possible office hours tomorrow on Blackboard announcements, so check for that as well.